All right, let's get right into it. There was a really urgent press conference held by Imran Khan's family and his legal team about his health in prison. And the claims they made were incredibly serious, and they've caused a whole lot of alarm. So we're going to break down exactly what was said.
And that's how this whole thing kicked off. Those were the opening words from Imran Khan's sister, Alima Khan. Right away, it set this deeply personal and, honestly, pretty urgent tone for everything that was about to follow. This wasn't just a political statement, it was framed as a family's concern, a national crisis in the making.
So, to really get a handle on their message, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at the 4 key parts of their address. First, the health crisis itself. Then, the specific allegations of who they think is responsible. After that, their wider critique of the judicial system. And finally, the ultimatum they've put on the table.
So first up, the main event, the reason this press conference even happened, a sudden and pretty severe medical emergency involving Imran Khan's eyesight.
This number right here is probably the most shocking detail to come out of the whole thing. According to his family, Imran Khan suffered a complete, total loss of vision in his right eye. After finally getting an injection, they claim only about 10 to 15% of his vision has come back. And to be clear, that's just enough to maybe perceive light, not enough to actually see.
The medical term they used for this condition was a retinal occlusion. Now, what is that? Well, it's basically a blockage of blood flow to the retina. This can cause sudden and, in some cases, permanent blindness. So they weren't talking about a minor issue here, they were describing a critical and possibly irreversible medical event.
Okay, so that medical crisis leads directly into their second major point. They were absolutely adamant that this wasn't some unfortunate accident. No, they claim it was the direct result of what they called criminal negligence by the prison authorities.
And one name came up again and again, Abdul Ghaffur Anjum. The speakers, citing a direct message from Imran Khan himself, pointed to this former jail superintendent as the official who allegedly ignored Khan's repeated complaints about his eye for months.
And then they laid out this timeline to back it up. They say the problem started way back in November, and by December, the vision in his right eye was totally gone. But still, no specialist was called. It was only after that superintendent was replaced on January 16th that a doctor was finally brought in, and even then, it was 10 days later. They're framing this as a critical period of just deliberate inaction. And this is where you see the huge gap between the care they're demanding and the care they say is being provided. The team is insisting he be examined at Shifa International Hospital by specific retina specialists they trust, but instead they claim he was taken to PIMS Hospital, which, according to them, doesn't even have the right kind of specialist for this condition.
Now, from that very specific medical complaint, the speakers really zoomed out. They started connecting Imran Khan's health condition to what they describe as a systemic failure inside the Pakistani judiciary.
They pointed to several key legal cases, like the Al-Qadir Trust and Toshakana II appeals. They argue these cases have been intentionally, repeatedly delayed. Their claim is that these delays are just a tactic to keep Imran Khan behind bars, no matter what the legal merits of his cases are.
And really, this quote from Alima Khan just sums up their entire argument. They're basically saying that the root of the whole problem, from the medical neglect to the stalled court cases, is a judiciary that they believe is not independent and is operating under a cloud of fear.
All right, so all of this brings us to the final part of their press conference. This is where they shifted from making accusations to issuing a very clear and very forceful ultimatum about what needs to happen next.
So they put a 3-step ultimatum on the table, and they were crystal clear about it. First, an immediate medical examination by specialists they trust. Second, the High Court needs to stop delaying his appeals. And third, his release, which they argue the law demands once those appeals are actually heard fairly. And then came a pretty direct warning. The Chief Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa basically said that if these demands aren't met, the people would use their constitutional right to protest, especially in his province. And he made a point to add that his provincial government and police would not stand in their way.
And just to make sure their position was absolutely clear, Alima Khan shared this defiant message she said came directly from her brother. It basically shuts down any idea of a deal for something like house arrest and reinforces his commitment to fighting his case, framing this whole thing as a battle against tyranny.
So in the end, this press conference leaves us all with this one fundamental question. As these really serious allegations of medical neglect and judicial obstruction are out there, it forces a much bigger debate about the duties of the state, the rights of any prisoner, and where does the buck stop? Where does the responsibility truly lie?